I've worked in the machine learning space for over a decade now, and our company has always been oriented on how do we democratize access to deep learning and training and fine-tuning of large language models. Through that time, we've kind of realized that yes, 90% of machine learning is really about labeling data, and the other 10% tends to be about complaining about labeling data. In order to get the best possible performance out of models, we have noticed that fine tuning is a consistent way to be able to increase the quality of your models while also being able to optimize for speed, like throughput, or the cost of the model by having a smaller model do what a larger model was doing before. And we worked with a number of customers that we've talked about previously, like Conversa, Upstage, and Checker, and many others, to be able to demonstrate that quality actually improves dramatically once you're able to fine tune on your own data. The biggest issue that I think we've run into with a subset of our customers, though, is that all of these efforts have conventionally required manually labeled or distillation data sets that were collected, again, manually over from larger models. And this presents a challenge, I think, to getting started with fine tuning, because it means that you need to be able to actually create data sets, oftentimes hundreds or thousands of examples, before you can actually get started and see some of the value that we actually unlock for a lot of the organizations that are doing this in the future. And this, I think, is really where we have been excited to take the bet on RFT, and where we think that it is going to help a lot with organizations and the types of value propositions they need. We find three types of settings in which it makes sense to use reinforcement fine-tuning. The first is that when you have no labeled data, but you can verify the correctness of the output. So another way of being able to say this is you don't have structured labeled data and thousands of examples of what good or bad was, but if the model came up with an answer, you have a very structured way of being able to score that answer and know if it's good or not. The second that we see is when you have limited labeled data, not enough for supervised fine-tuning, but maybe dozens of examples that you can use as part of the verification process. And then the final condition or property that we often find indicates that reinforcement fine-tuning might be useful for your problem is that if chain of thought improves the overall model performance. Or put another way, if one of the larger reasoning models is particularly adept at the task that you're looking to do, then we generally find that reinforcement fine-tuning can work well on that as well. We've published a flowchart that also helps you understand what are the kinds of areas or settings in which you can think about the different types of model customization techniques. Everything from RLHF, reinforcement learning through human feedback, to RFT or supervised fine-tuning. In general, we try and break it down into two types of questions. The first is, how much ground truth or labeled data do you have? If you have less, then you want to use one of the more reinforcement learning oriented mechanisms. And if you have more, you want to use one of the more supervised fine-tuning oriented mechanisms. And then from there, if the task is verifiable or not. The way that we think about verifiable is, can you write a scoring function or rubric that allows you to actually be able to tell whether this works well, or what we oftentimes call in our product reward functions. We're going to dive a lot more into that in just a few minutes. One of the things that people ask about after we talk about general properties of where RFT makes sense is, what are the kinds of use cases that we see success in? And the first thing I want to indicate is that I think that the overall industry is quite early when it comes towards reinforcement fine-tuning. So I think we're going to learn a lot more about the use cases that are going to be popular in the coming months.